Can we logically prove the existence of a creator? Not quite. Now, don't be discouraged because the story isn't as bad as it seems. In fact, we can get really close with an argument that I believe is the best philosophical argument for the existence of a creator that I've come across. It doesn't carry all the water by itself, but it lays a good foundation to build upon. It's come to be known as the Kalam Cosmological Argument, and its modern day chief proponent is the well regarded apologist and scholar Dr. William Lane Craig. It goes as follows: 1. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. 2. The universe began to exist. And 3. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Before I go too far into it, I want to be clear how I, personally, use arguments like this. I will not argue, because I don't think I can in an intellectually honest way, that the Kalam argument proves the concept of God, particularly the Christian concept of God. Perhaps that's already obvious, but it's worth saying just in case. To take it even one step further, the argument doesn't even, on its own, argue for a God at all. What it does, in my opinion, is lay the foundation that permits a wide variety of God/creator concepts to be placed on the same explanatory footing as the so-called purely scientific, non-falsifiable rebuttal arguments. The beauty of this argument lies in its simplicity coupled with its power. To begin with, if its first two tenets are true, then the conclusion is necessarily and definitively true. Again, this may be obvious, but there are many arguments that fallaciously fail to deductively be true in this way. For example, premise 1, smoking causes cancer. Premise 2, millions die from cancer every year. And premise 3, therefore smoking causes millions of deaths every year. Now, I trust that most of the people that follow this channel caught that. But just in case, this is an example of an argument where two premises and even a true conclusion don't necessarily connect. Yes, we can accept as true that smoking causes cancer. We can also accept as true that millions die from cancer every year. However, what does not become logically true from this proof is that smoking causes millions of deaths every year. The deception here is that it may in fact be actually true, but the premises don't require or force that conclusion, because the second premise that millions die from cancer every year doesn't necessarily link the cause of cancer in that premise to smoking. And so, if we're not on our toes, we can easily have the wool pulled over our eyes with deductions that aren't logically true, even where the possibility is that the conclusion is actually true. But that's enough of that rabbit hole. The point here is we shouldn't presume that arguments presented as syllogisms in this way mean that the conclusion is necessarily logically true. We should scrutinize. However, when it comes to Kalam, the premises necessarily and definitively mandate the conclusion, so long as those premises are true. Thus, to attack this argument, one has to attack the premises. Philosophically, the Kalam cosmological argument is rather simple. It's easy to understand intuitively, even for the uninitiated. But its power lies in the fact that the first two premises can only be attacked scientifically, and all scientific attacks on it, that is, all non-falsifiable scientific attacks on it, fail. In short, the argument philosophically creates a zero-sum argument for the existence of a causal agent behind the origin of the universe. By agent here, again, I'm not per se saying a creator or any persona for that matter. So, either the universe was caused, and thus the causal agent exists somehow outside of, before, and independent of the universe, or it was not caused, i.e. it sprang from nothing, without any cause at all, or it already existed and has always existed. If either of these latter arguments is true, then admittedly, there's no need to postulate a causal agent, philosophically or logically speaking. But if neither is demonstrably true, then a causal agent is required by the proof, hence the zero sum. So let's go step by step. Premise 1. What begins to exist must have a cause. The premise starts intuitively. For something that doesn't exist to begin to exist, there must be something that causes it. Of course, this can be challenged, and some try. The challenge here would require some proof that a thing that doesn't yet exist can spontaneously come into being without any cause, i.e. something from literal nothing, uncaused. There is a deep philosophical rabbit hole that we can crawl down here, but suffice it to say that if we were to accept such a rebuttal, we'd need evidence. Namely, we'd need falsifiable, testable scientific evidence that such a thing is possible. And to date, we don't have such evidence, and for reasons found deep in the rabbit hole we're not going down, you probably never will. Coming from a scientific background, I try my best to be fair here, and so I won't pretend that I've seen every theory out there. But I can say that I know what such a theory must show if for any of this is to be true. 1. The starting milieu is nothing. Absolutely nothing. 2. Something, an actual something, for example matter, sprang into existence from that nothing. And 3. Nothing whatsoever, nothing by definition, caused that to happen. No testable, falsifiable theory has been put forth yet that addresses this, and so I think we can safely put this premise to bed. So let's get to premise 2. This is where the action is. The universe began to exist. Now, for decades, we've all been taught that the universe had a beginning, and that beginning is understood through what is commonly referred to as the Big Bang. What the Big Bang hasn't explained and doesn't attempt to explain is the origin of all the matter that, for the lack of a better word, banged into our modern universe. It's necessarily silent on that issue. Now, while this is the most common scientific explanation for the earliest milliseconds of the universe, there are other theories. And again, these are rabbit holes in their own rights. Some theories postulate a universe that had no beginning, it just always was. And to explain the data analyzed by the Big Bang theorists, i.e., ever-increasing entropy, cooling, expansion, etc., these scientists postulate all kinds of fantastic theories, such as a universe that's constantly expanding and collapsing like a slinky over and over and over again since forever. We don't need to get into all of these theories here, as the point of this analysis is only to show that this premise, like premise 1, can only be defeated with plausible, scientific, falsifiable theories. In short, unless it's shown, nay, ever can be shown, that our universe had no beginning, that every bit of matter, every atom, every molecule was always here and always will be, this premise cannot be defeated. Of course, this also means some showing that the universe can never end. So for our purposes, we're going to go on a limb and say that this premise, premise 2, holds true because no falsifiable theory has ever been put forth that shows that the universe never had a beginning. Now, I know some are crying foul right now. You're saying God of the gaps, or how do you know science can never answer these questions? And I totally get it. So let's be clear. I'm not arguing for a God, not here at least. And I'm not saying that if we don't have a scientific explanation, it must be God. Obviously, that kind of reasoning is fallacious, and we try our best to avoid such fallacies here. What I am saying, which is unavoidable, is that if we're only left with untestable, unfalsifiable explanations, then there's no reason to favor any unfalsifiable and untestable explanation over any other. This is a foot stomp point. The universe just always was, without scientifically falsifiable backing, is just as viable an argument for what the universe was caused by as God did it. Neither is testable, neither is provable, and thus neither is superior to the other. So to wrap up, the Kalam argument gives us a zero-sum framework for laying the foundation for a creator. Either we get falsifiable scientific theories that can rebut it. Indeed, such a theory would literally be the most important theory in the history of humankind. Or we get non-falsifiable, non-scientific theories about how the universe was caused to exist. So I'll end with an invitation. I welcome challenges to this, admittedly simple framing. I welcome presentation of falsifiable scientific theories that rebut one or more of these premises. Please share them with me in the comments. I promise to address anything viable. But alas, without these theories, indeed we're dealing with a cause that exists outside of what we know as space-time, conceptually outside of our universe, even outside of our understanding. A space where we are permitted to postulate a creator. But work needs to be done to advance that creator theory beyond what we can do with Kalam. And that's something we'll be addressing little by little over time.